It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Deontay Epps, who owns the podcast Duo Sports Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to own a sports podcast?
Well, it started with my best friend and I, Dane Beasley, since high school. We just always talked about sports, playing in sports, and throughout our college years, that pretty much was the same. And we kind of came up with this idea, man, that, it's pretty cool to, we talk about sports and all the time. And we also talk about video games, and our favorite thing is like the Marvel movies and stuff like that. And we thought it'd be a great idea to like talk about that and record it and, let others hear our thoughts, our family and friends, and possibly others hear what we talk about every day. So it kind of just was an idea in the head that kind of came to fruition in 2019, right before the pandemic. So we started it. Our first episode was November 2019, and it's been a great experience so far.
Of course, how did you come up with the name Duo Sports?
So back in high school, my co-host, my best friend, and I, we both played receiver in high school, and our nickname from everybody else was like the duo, because we were like a tag team receiver duo, and also we were best friends, so we're always around each other. So it kind of just stuck from there. So people started calling us the duo, and so I was like, man, we were thinking of a name. We're like, man, let's be the duo. So ended up being the Duo Sports and Stuff podcast. So that's how it came from.
What do you cover on the Duo Sports Podcast?
We cover everything from like our big what we focus on more is like NFL and NBA kind of stuff, because that's what we know the most. But we've also had guests from the track and field arena. We cover big topics like the social justice movement that happened, not too long ago and stuff like that. And then we're nerds to the core. So we love video games. We love Marvel stuff, DC stuff. So we cover the newest shows that come out, the newest movies and stuff like that, our thoughts on that. And basically it's like, I like to describe it as like the jocks and the nerds together kind of thing.
Who are some of the people that you've had on your podcast?
So yeah, we've had a number of amazing guests in the world of sports. Most recently, we had Jay Billis on to talk about NIL rule, and that was actually the second time we had him on. The first time was like right around the pandemic, when we weren't sure if college football was going to be played, so we kind of got his thoughts on that. We've had Trey Wingo, we've had Marcus Spears from ESPN. We have had Master Tesfessian from Bleacher Report, Untold Stories, LeJethro Jenkins. We've had Coach John Mosley from Last Chance U basketball, RJ Stern from the last football season. Man, the list goes on, but it's definitely been an amazing experience to meet some people, especially the ones that you see on TV, and to actually have great conversations with them.
How do you go about getting some of the guests that you've had on, like Jay Billis?
Man, so the Jay Billis one was crazy. So it was like in August of 2020. So I'm a teacher, so it was like right before I went back to school to the school year. But it was right around, we didn't know if college football was gonna be happening, and so I was like, man, let me just shoot him an email and give him a pitch and see what happens. And I lie to you not, Brandon, maybe 5 minutes later, he emailed back, like it was that quick. And he said, yeah, when can I come on? So I think it kind of was more of a luck thing, because everybody was at home. Nobody was really out and about during the quarantine. So he agreed to come on, and we've been blessed and fortunate enough to actually have him on twice. So that was crazy.
What was it like to have Jay Billis come on to talk about the NIL, the name, image, and likeness?
Man, it was timely, very timely. So on our podcast, we talked about NIL often and a lot, and our feelings and thoughts about that. And Jay as well, he's very open about it on his social media about how he feels about the NCAA, of course, and of course the NIL rule and paying athletes and stuff. So it was one of those perfect timing kind of things where like this was the issue going on. Everybody was talking about it. And here's a guy that knows a lot about it and he has strong feelings about it. So to bring him on our show to talk about that was great and, more than perfect on the timing aspect.
Of course, speaking about the NIL, name, image, and likeness, what are your thoughts on the name, image, and likeness?
Man, I think it's long overdue. From a standpoint of, I always talked about how the NCAA kind of is set in old ways from way back in the day, but it's 2021 and things have changed tremendously on that aspect where we look back and see rules that, why is that rule there? Like, what sense does it make? Especially if the NCAA, and this is just how I feel, the NCAA is making billions of dollars on these athletes. So I think it's more than enough time for them to, kind of see some type of profit. And then on the selfish side, I'm a sports video game nerd, and one of my favorite games from back in the day was the NCAA Football 14 series. So I'm definitely excited for that to come back in some capacity. So the sooner that the NIL rule can go through and athletes can get paid, I could play the game again.
Of course, since you are a video game nerd and you do like the NCAA football, where do you see the NIL really doing with the NCAA? Do you see athletes? How do you see athletes making money off of the video game?
Well, according to some reports that EA Sports is kind of like waiting the way. It's still like 2 years away from the game being released. So they're kind of like in a perfect time where they have a chance for the NIL rule to go in effect for, a few years. But their ultimate goal is to get the real players' names, just like you see in the Madden series, 2K and stuff like that, to get the player's name and likeness in. So I'm not sure what kind of money that we're talking about here, but I'm sure what needs to happen next is like some type of group licensing thing where players can get a certain profit off of being in the game. So I think eventually, maybe in a year or so, you'll see an announcement where they're actually going to do that. But for EA Sports that announced that they were coming out with one, I think it's just they have time. Like, it's not a rush to get things done now, but now that the NIL rule is in place and you have these states coming out with these laws for NIL, that they have time to kind of figure out what they want to do. But I think it's all in a positive direction right now.
What are some of the topics that you talk about on your podcast?
We we have ranged from a lot of topics. Like, usually when we're on our podcast, we talk about what's the main sports topic going on. So right now it's been like NBA finals, talking about Chris Paul, Giannis, how Phoenix and Milwaukee have been a pleasant surprise. Like, it's great to see new teams in the finals besides your everyday LeBrons or stuff like that. So we talked about the NBA finals. We talk about crazy highlights that happened during the week since our last episode. And then on the podcast or the sports and video game stuff, we talked about Marvel. And so the big thing with Marvel right now is the Loki series that is on Disney Plus. Of course, Black Widow came out on the 9th of July. So we give our thoughts on that. And then we preview kind of what's coming up next. So it's more like we start out with the sports segment, and then we call it our nerdy news segment, which we like to do our comic book movie stuff and video games.
Of course, as you talk about video games, do you input like a lot of sports video games like Madden, NCAA, and other games like that into your segments?
Yeah, sometimes, like if there's a new report or a new trailer for a game, we kind of talk about the trailer and what to expect with the game and stuff like that. We haven't really been too happy with the Madden franchise right now, and so that actually brings me to my point. We had a guest come on that started this big viral movement last year with the Fix Madden franchise hashtag. His name is Brian Mazik, but he's like a sports and gaming columnist for Forbes. And so he started this big movement about the different features of the video game that we want to see fixed. And so we actually had him on as a guest as well to talk about it and what he expects to happen with the sports video game franchises in the next few years. But for the most part, we talk about what we want to see in the video game and, the latest news on what might be coming out and stuff like that.
Of course, when it comes to Madden, what is your input on the new cover for Madden 2020?
Uh, with the new one with Mahomes and Brady.
Yes.
It's okay, I guess. They've both been on the cover before, so I kind of was like, man, maybe I felt like they should have probably went in the direction of a new kind of face. But I mean, they're the two best quarterbacks in the game, obviously, right now, and so I see why they went that route. But I'm a Broncos fan, so anybody Broncos I would have preferred, but we haven't been good in a while, so I understand that decision.
Of course, when it does come to the Madden cover, do you think that Madden should do more defense players and offense players, like switch it up every year versus always having maybe like an offensive player on the cover?
That'd be good. That'd be a good idea. I think that'd be interesting. I feel like what their direction is kind of like how sports or football is in general, where offensive players are mainly always on the highlights. They put up points, like they sell tickets, they get fans in the seats, and I think that's the direction they want to go. But I would love to see a defensive player like an Aaron Donald on the cover, or Jalen Ramsey, like top defensive players in the league, a Von Miller, because I'm a Broncos fan. But that would be a great idea. I would like that.
What is your input on the Madden curse? Do you believe in it?
I used to, but like the last few years, Lamar Jackson did pretty well last year. I think the last few years it hasn't really been a thing, but there was a stretch, man, back in the day where if you're on the cover, that was like a jinx, like Michael Vick back in Madden 2004, Ray Lewis 2005. I think Donovan McNabb was on 2006. So yeah, there was a string where it was close to being real, if not real. But I don't think players really care about it anymore. Of course, it hasn't really been talked about because the players that have been on the covers have had great seasons. So,
of course, do you think in the NCAA football and basketball games there will be like a curse, like the Madden curse?
Oh, that's a good question. That is a good question. I hope not for those players' sakes, because I wouldn't want to be on the cover. But I guess we just have to wait and see. I don't think so. I think I'm gonna go with the Madden curse, the cover curse in general being broken.
Of course, when it comes to EA Sports and having NCAA football game coming back, do you see other games like the basketball game and maybe having like girls soccer, women's basketball?
Oh yeah,
starting a game.
That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. I feel like, yeah, with this new college football game coming out, they're probably gonna test the waters to kind of see how it does. And obviously, they would love to make money, and so definitely could see a game like that coming out. One game I would love to see that they used to make, and especially considering now that the Olympics are going on, those old track and field Olympic games that used to come out every 4 years. I wish they would have made one like that, but hopefully they could come up with I would love to also see the baseball one. They used to make the college baseball games too. So I think they're going to try to test the waters to see how the college football game does and base their decisions on that.
What are some of your future plans for your podcasts?
Man, good question. I think right now we just want to try to get a lot of content and, more audience to our podcast. I mean, the goal in the beginning wasn't to make it big or to get a lot of followers, subscribers, or whatever, but that's always a plus. And like, we always like to bring more audience in, a new audience in. And so I think the goal right now is just to continue to get better every day, continue to bring out great content that people love, that people like, and give us great feedback on. But, maybe one day we can get up there where you are, Brandon.
I can tell you it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
What advice would you give somebody looking to start their own sports podcast?
Oh, man. That is a great question. I would tell them there were times where we like, sometimes you could feel like you have that get in a rut where, like, man, do I really want to do, like, I have to record today, like set a schedule for how you do things. I think it makes it a lot easier. And Brandon, you do this on your own, so like it's great for you because you on your own set schedule. But with my co-host and I, we have a set schedule and how we want to post things or what content we want to bring. We prepare with notes before each podcast and stuff like that. So I would just say be prepared, and just have a set schedule for yourself. And don't get frustrated. I mean, in the beginning, if you have 1 listener, 2 listeners, it's okay. Like, don't do it because you want more followers. Don't do it because you want more subscribers. Do it because you want to. Do it because it's your passion. It's what you care about. It's what you love. And then I would just say, don't give up.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find your podcast at on social media and podcast platforms?
Awesome. Yeah. You could find the Duo Sports and Stuff podcast on all digital streaming platforms. That's Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're also on YouTube, trying to get our YouTube content up as well. And then we have our website, www.theduosportsandstuffpodcast.com.
Thank you again for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Duo Sports Podcast.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.